Hello, hello. Welcome to Life Extension's quarterly webinar, Spring into Health with our latest nutrients. I am Dr. Crystal Gossard. I'm a doctor of clinical nutrition, a certified nutrition specialist, and a licensed dietitian nutritionist. And I am an education specialist for Life Extension. And we also have on with us as a panelist slash moderator, Dr. Vanessa Pavey. She is a naturopathic doctor and she is an education scientist in the education department. And we're so happy that you're here with us. We are going to jump in and talk about our latest nutrients. It's spring, and, Life Extension, we have a dedication to quality, but also a dedication to innovative nutrients. We're always looking at, what's new out there, what research is emerging, and what things we can bring to you. And that's what this webinar is all about. And so we'll just jump in here. And our first topic is vitamin B12. And you may be asking yourself, hey, wait, B12 has been around for a while. What do you mean? This is not a new innovation, but stay tuned. We do have new information to share with you about B12, a new reason to take B12. And you can see protection for your brain. So let's just talk about the role of B12 in the body. Most people, I believe, at least my family members, think about B12 related to energy. My dad, my cousins, they all think, oh, I'm just so low on energy. Should I ask my doctor about B12? Should I get B12 injections? That's what most people kind of consider. And then they also, I would say, second to that, they think about anemia and concerns related to maybe pernicious anemia and B12. But B12, yes, if you're taking it for energy, it is necessary for the body to release energy from the foods that you eat every day. It is a vital nutrient involved in that process. Cell metabolism, energy production, but it's also needed for nerve health. So some people think about B12 related to, let's say, tingling feelings in their fingers or their toes. When someone's dealing with maybe nerve damage or they're wanting to heal or support the health of their nerves, then maybe they think about B12 in that respect as well. It is essential for the myelin sheath surrounding neurons. And this myelin sheath, that I kind of think about that as being able to put your neurons or your nerves into super speed, warp speed. It kind of helps those neurons transmit information faster. So, if you're thinking about needing that next word, it's on the tip of my tongue, or what was that person's name, or I'm taking a test and I need to be able to think quickly. B12 can help with the myelin that can support more efficient nerve transmission. Formation of red blood cells. Yes, B12 is needed for red blood cells. We know red blood cells, they transport hemoglobin, which then gives oxygen to the body. So that's another, relation to energy and energy production. If you're not getting proper oxygen to your tissues, yes, you are going to feel a little bit tired. It helps with the synthesis of neurotransmitters, dopamine in particular, helps with healthy methylation. Now, this is another claim to fame of vitamin B12, particularly in the alternative medicine realm, is methylation. This is a process where our body is able to break down a particular amino acid, and we know amino acids, those are the building blocks of protein, and it helps to keep the cycle going where your body is able to properly metabolize that amino acid, properly make neurotransmitters, properly help to increase glutathione. All of this occurs in this cycle in the body. It's a process in the body called methylation, and B12, particularly the active form of B12, methylcobalamin. Some of you are familiar with that, I'm sure. That is the form to particularly help with methylation and also help to detox homocysteine. Homocysteine can build up in the body, and it's a risk factor for cardiovascular health. Also helps to make DNA, helps to keep it healthy. So, you know, we can go on and on and on about the details about B12 in the body. We know it's vital. We know it's essential. Found primarily in animal sources, meat, fish, poultry, eggs, dairy products. That's where you're going to find B12 in your food sources. So that leads us to the next topic. Who is at risk for not getting enough B12? If it's found primarily in animal products, then of course, strict vegetarians, I say strict because some people, everyone who says they're a vegetarian, they could be cheating, but strict vegetarians, strict vegans, they are more likely, or they will more likely have a need for additional B12. They may not be getting enough. It's generally not present, and I say generally not present in plant foods. And those who've had intestinal surgery, for example, bariatric surgery, it affects up to 62% of patients after bariatric surgery. They have trouble with B12, digestive disorders, obvious Crohn's disease, celiac disease, those are just examples. But anyone who's dealing with inadequate stomach acid, in food, B12 is bound to protein, and stomach acid is required to free the B12 so that you can absorb that B12. And we do understand that 10 to 30% of older adults over age 50 have a decrease in stomach acid. That means that you have trouble digesting your foods, particularly your protein. But in the case of what we're talking about today, you are not able to properly digest and absorb your B12. Of course, we talked about pernicious anemia, but I also wanted to discuss common medications that many people take that could be depleting your B12. Metformin, one of the most commonly prescribed medications for diabetes. Birth control pills can also deplete B12. Chronic alcohol consumption, that means that you probably need a little bit more as well. And what's really shocking, when you don't have B12, low levels have been associated with brain shrinkage. No one wants that. I want my brain to be as large as possible. And so we want to make sure that we are getting enough. And so we wanted to outline who potentially could be at risk for not getting enough B12. Now, I have something fun for you, and actually maybe I'll go back before I go to that slide. And I have a poll. And here's what we want to know. Have you ever taken vitamin B12? Now, and this is outside of a supplement, outside of a multivitamin. Have you ever taken just like a standalone B12? Wow, wow. Okay, the responses are coming in. I have there on my second screen here. So I think we have enough responses. So let's take a look at the results. Wow, 83% of you have taken B12. Now we have a follow-up question to that question. All right, let's get the follow-up question. What form of B12 have you taken? Did you know that there were different? Oh, wow. Methylcobalamin is winning. There's cyanocobalamin. Yes, some of you, I didn't know there were so many. So cyanocobalamin, methylcobalamin. All right, it looks like I'll share the results. It looks like methylcobalamin won. 55% of you have taken a standalone B12 in the form of methylcobalamin. Now let's take a look at some of the different forms. You know, cyanocobalamin, that's a form that you find in many of your multivitamins out on the market. And so let's just take a look at the different forms. And I'm going to pull up my little pointer here. So we have cyanocobalamin. 8% of you have taken cyanocobalamin. Now this is the form again that you'll find in many of your B12 multivitamins. It's a man-made form. And when here this column, number of conversion steps. That means the number of conversion steps to get that B12 into the active forms of B12. So we do see there are a few more steps that cyanocobalamin has to go through. Then you have hydroxycobalamin. This is if you've ever received B12 injections, that is the form that you were likely given. And then methylcobalamin, the most common form from our poll. 55% of you have taken methylcobalamin. Yes, this is the form. It's the active form of B12. It's the form when I was in school learning all about B12, the emphasis was on methylcobalamin. But then there is adenosylcobalamin. And that wasn't on the poll. I guess I should have put that on the poll as well. But this is also an active form of B12. And it's a natural form of B12, bioactive coenzyme. And this is the form that has life extension. Very, very excited. And so let's just take a little bit closer look. And that's what this is all about. New innovations. We want to introduce to all of you this new form of B12, adenosylcobalamin. And so methylcobalamin is involved with lowering homocysteine, nerve protection. And what you're looking at on the screen, this is kind of a representation of a cell. And inside of your cell, you have different organelles, the mitochondria. This is where energy is produced. And then you have the area outside where other organelles sit. And so the methylcobalamin is active in the cytosol, or this intracellular fluid inside of the cell. The adenosylcobalamin is active in the mitochondria. It has unique properties that methylcobalamin does not. It helps protect brain neurons, prevents decline in dopamine, blocks neurodegeneration, and is actually most prevalent in human tissues, making up as much as 70% of all forms. So this is what's new for life extension. We're wanting to introduce to you, the benefits of this new form of B12. Now let's go back. And as you kind of just to summarize, I just have some questions to help you identify maybe you do, maybe you don't need B12. Is it something you should consider adding in? Are you concerned about neurotoxicity? Are you a vegan or a vegetarian? Do you have digestive health issues? And most importantly, if you have digestive health issues, are you taking something that could be lowering the acid environment in your stomach? Are you taking any proton pump inhibitors, any H2 blockers? Are you taking Tums? Are you taking any type of antacid? Because that is decreasing the amount of B12 that your body will need. Do you take medications that deplete B12? So we kind of went over some of that. Metformin, are you taking metformin? And are you interested in supporting dopamine? And we'll talk about dopamine in the next section, but we do know that this form in particular is a form that can help to support dopamine, which is our reward neurotransmitter. So you have a goal of about 300 to 5,000 micrograms per day, very large range in which you can take. What about blood testing? You know, life extension is all about, you know, testing to see if this is something that you need. Well, B12 is unique. It's unique in that the test is not really designed to pick up on optimal levels. Most people who are taking B12 supplementation, whenever they test their B12 on the blood test, it's going to look really high. It's going to be above the range. And so that's something that we often have to educate that, you know, that while testing B12 is good, it will help to pick up a deficiency, but it's not really that great for telling you whether or not you're taking, you know, maybe too much. And, you know, the fact of the matter is there's no known toxicity for vitamin B12. That's why you see the dose so high, 5,000 micrograms. But B12 testing, it is measuring all forms of B12 in the serum. You know, if you're looking to identify B12 deficiency, early deficiency can be detected through a test called MMA. So that's something else you may want to consider as well. Now let's move on to our next new topic, which is all about dopamine. Stay sharp, stay motivated. I love talking about dopamine. It's our excitatory neurotransmitter. I kind of think of it, it's our feel good, our pleasure neurotransmitter. Pleasurable emotional experiences increase dopamine. Some people will go to great lengths to achieve the feelings that we achieve from the dopamine rush. The daredevils, the skydivers, you know, some may be more problematic. It's related to addictions, like, you know, that urge for drugs, like those who seek cocaine, opioid abuse, even alcohol abuse, even gambling. Whenever you gamble, that's that rush that you feel, that is dopamine. And something that most people don't think about is the reach for the snacks or the sweets. Sugar can also increase dopamine. So those are efforts that, you know, the sugar at least may seem harmless at first, but can become problematic, such as binging on sugar. And, you know, a fun fact that's, I guess, relevant. I have my smartphone here. The role of dopamine is now extending to our relationship with our smartphones and social media. This urge to always check the timeline, the urge to see how many likes, to see, you know, what's going on the phones. And but it's beyond that, you know, obviously desire, but it's involved with motivation, body coordination, and most importantly, cognitive performance. And so we know that dopamine level is higher when we're young. As we age, it starts decreasing, and so we have more of a tendency to indulge in different things to try to get that dopamine rush. But this decline in dopamine as we age, this could be the reason why we don't feel as good in our later years, just not as enthusiastic about things that used to bring us pleasure. And so I just want to just pause and have you kind of think about that. Things that you once used to find very pleasurable, you now have, you know, you're less motivated to do those things, to get out and go for a walk, to exercise. You know, we've lost that vigor. And a part of that relates to this decline in dopamine with age. We see dopamine levels decline 13% each decade after the age of 45. And we do know, especially with Parkinson's disease in particular, loss of dopamine function has been shown to play a role in the development of neurodegenerative diseases. So symptoms such as lack of motivation, but just more so cognitive decline, is associated with a decrease in dopamine. Now, let's talk about why this happens, and then we'll get to the solution. Why this happens is the increase of an enzyme found in the brain that breaks down dopamine. So we have this cool little Pac-Man here on the screen. Pac-Man is MAOB. And then these are the little dopamine pieces that the Pac-Man is breaking down. And so as we age, increase after middle age, we have more and more of these Pac-Mans floating around in the body. And this leads to lower levels of dopamine. Now, I went down a rabbit hole to try to find out, why is this MAOB increasing? Why do we have so much of this enzyme breaking down dopamine? And one path I led down was due to oxidative stress. Can cause MAOB to be overactive, but we do know it's a problem. There are prescription medications that actually target MAOB. One in particular that Life Extension has talked about for a very long time is Deprinyl. It's actually combined often with a Parkinson's disease medication to try to help to support dopamine in the body. So we know that there are conventional approaches to help target this overactive MAOB. But what about nutritional support? And that brings us to two nutrients. There's that B12 again that we talked about, that adenosylcobalamin, that helps to target MAOB, helps to support healthy dopamine levels. And then we also have the star nutrient that we'll focus on in this section is philodendron. Now, philodendron has been used in traditional Japanese, Chinese herbal medicines for centuries. In Korea, the bark is used from the cork tree. There's a type of cork tree that provides some of the benefits that you will get from phenodendron. And what we found is this is one of the most powerful inhibitors of MAOB. And it was provided to us by nature. We know it has neuroprotective properties that protect against amyloid beta toxicity, which is also seen in the brain of those with Alzheimer's disease. And so let's look at how this works. And this is a little technical, but I'll try to use my pointer to kind of explain what we're looking at on this slide. So what we're looking at now are two neurons. And what most people may or may not know is that neurons don't touch, but somehow they have to transmit information. So what we're looking here is a dopaminergic neuron, and inside of this neuron are these vessels that contain neurotransmitters. So we're looking at dopamine here in a neurotransmitter. So what typically happens is that dopamine is released into this space called the synaptic cleft, and then it binds to the receptor of the next neuron, and then that's what keeps the signal going, that keeps the transmission of that signal. Well, what happens is the neurotransmitter here, this is dopamine, it usually kind of goes back into that presynaptic neuron, and it has two fates that we can see on this slide. One is it gets repackaged. So ideally, you would want that dopamine to kind of go through this cycle. We want it to be repackaged. But the other fate is that dopamine gets broken down by MAOB, this enzyme. And if it's broken down, it can't be recycled and we can't use the dopamine. The dopamine is no more. So what we find, philodendron kind of comes in and helps to block this process. It helps to prevent that MAOB from being broken down. Now, how do we know that? And this is where the science comes in. And I'll try to get through this slide. It's a little bit faster, but we just want you to see how, just take a glimpse into the researcher's mind to screen for activity with different nutrients. It's common that researchers prepare extracts. And so this is a study where they screened 155 plant extracts. And the goal was to see which ones perform the best at inhibiting MAOB. And so we're just showing you how Life Extension ultimately decided that philodendron was the nutrient that we wanted to highlight. Philodendron was ranked as one of the 4 most potent extracts for MAOB inhibition. And what made us really excited, you can see on this slide, is its inhibiting effects were very similar to a prescription medication. So, it's nice when you see, that things have been used or nutrients have been used traditionally. They may not, back, thousands of years ago, we may not have known how it was working. We didn't have the technology to identify exactly what it was doing. But now we have the science has advanced where we can really look at these things and identify what it's doing. And so traditionally it's been used for many years as an anti-inflammatory, antibacterial, antiviral, many anti-tumor properties. And now we know that it is inhibiting MAOB to help to support dopamine in the body. And let's move on to our last topic, which is enhancing autophagy. Now, I didn't create a poll for this. I should have, but I want you to think. Hopefully, all of you recycle. We know the benefits of recycling, right? We know even if you don't recycle, we all take out the garbage in our homes. Imagine if that did not happen. Imagine if your home was filled with garbage, filled with trash. You wouldn't be able to get around. It would not be a very functioning place to live. Well, let's take this to our cells. Our cells have a cleanup process, a housekeeping process, and this process is called autophagy, cellular cleanup process. It's an important cellular and tissue maintenance process. It helps cells to rejuvenate. Cells recycle and they clean up metabolic waste, damaged parts. They repurpose cellular components. It's actually an energy conservation process in the cell. It's really, the goal is to maintain efficient energy production and to conserve energy. Yes. And consistent activation of autophagy in research has been shown to support cell health, overall health, and also increases lifespan in several preclinical models of aging. So what's our problem? You guessed it, this process declines as we age. And what we see is neurodegenerative diseases, metabolic diseases, infections, cardiovascular, inflammatory issues, all can be pinned back to a dysregulation of this cellular housekeeping process. Cell survival is dependent upon the ability of the cell to reduce and recycle. It's there to protect the cell when the cell is under stress. It helps that cell to rebuild. So again, we see a natural decline, and this contributes to aging. Now, how can we upregulate this process naturally? And this is where it gets good. Those of you out there who are practicing calorie restriction, thumbs up. You are stimulating autophagy. How about intermittent fasting? That's a big thing. I intermittent fast a couple of times a week, like I'm fasting right now. I feel like it helps to boost my mental capacity before I have to do big presentations. What about exercise? If you're exercising, you're also stimulating autophagy. You kind of put that cell into a mode where, energy reserves are a little bit down. So why don't I repurpose some of the cellular components? So it's a way to kind of recycle and repurpose. However, we know that all of these, calorie restriction, intermittent fasting, exercise, we perform poorly at being consistent for many of these things. But the common denominator, just to give you some of the science, we know that these choices, all of these things are increasing two key or targeting two key processes in the body. One is AMPK. So we are activating AMPK, which is kind of the cell energy sensor. It's an activator of autophagy, and stimulating AMPK has been shown to improve metabolic health and lifespan. But we also know that it's targeting mTOR. mTOR is a nutrient sensor, and we don't want mTOR to be activated all the time. When it's activated, it shuts off autophagy. So I just wanted to kind of bring in some of those mechanisms of action for those of you, the researchers out there who are wanting to know why, how is this taking place? But we do know constant consumption of calories denies aging cells the ability to clean house via autophagy. And so these are some lifestyle ways. However, nature has given us nutritional support for autophagy. So one is long pepper extract, and the other is luteolin. And Life Extension has worked with a company in silico to identify these nutritional solutions using AI, artificial intelligence. And so artificial intelligence, this is the new wave for research. Artificial intelligence allows researchers to be able to sift through or do the work that it may take thousands of years of humans to do in regard to kind of sifting through information, sifting through research to identify things that may be supportive and beneficial. So through AI, we've identified two nutrients that support autophagy: piperlongumine and luteolin. Piperlongumine is an active component from long pepper. It's distinct. Some of you may be familiar with piperine or black pepper extract. It's distinct from that. So it's not piperine, but it is a type of pepper extract that we know can help to upregulate the process of autophagy. And then luteolin, it's an antioxidant. Some of you may be familiar with, present in vegetables, fruits, herbs such as celery and broccoli. So let's take a look. I have an animation on the next slide, and this is going to help us to identify what's going on. So piperlongumine works by activating what we call cellular garbage bags called autophagosomes. So these cellular garbage bags, you kind of think about, the recycling process in your homes. You have to have the bags to put the recyclable goods in. So this garbage bag is inactivated typically. Let's just go back with my animation. And it needs to be activated in order to support the process of autophagy. So we see the piperlongumine helps to activate that garbage bag. And once that garbage bag is activated, then the next step is the ability for us to recycle cellular waste. And then our next ingredient, luteolin. Luteolin helps to upregulate some of the enzymes. Once we have, and let's go back to that analogy, once you have your recyclable goods in the bag, they have to be taken to the recycle plant. And then there are many enzymes and things like that that will be used to help to break down the plastics or the paper or the cardboard. And so what you find when we look at that from a cellular perspective, we have these enzyme compartments that are involved with helping the body to kind of break down the recyclable cellular debris. And that's where luteolin comes in. It helps to support these lysosomes that contains enzymes that breaks down cellular waste. So let's take it, take it back to everyday life to help you to identify, should I be interested in supporting autophagy? Would you benefit? So you can ask yourself, are you interested in keeping your cells functioning optimally? I'm sure you are. That's why you're on today. How about supporting whole body cellular detox? That's another way that people kind of describe this process of autophagy. It's detox, but detoxing at the cellular level. What about boosting your immune response, manufacturing energy more efficiently? How about an alternative or complement to fasting and or exercise regimens to support cellular autophagy? Longevity, looking to target several autophagy pathways. We do see in research that autophagy can increase longevity and lifespan or health span. I like to use the term health span rather than lifespan, because you don't want to just get older. You want your older years to be healthy years. You want, as you get older, to still be, once you're older, you're retired, you still want to be able to get around, help to take care of your grandkids, to be able to finally travel. You have the time. And so you want to be as healthy as possible. And that's what we talk about when we say health span. And we know that supporting autophagy can help with that. And so these are two nutrients that you should consider. Piperlongumine, again, is kind of helping to form that autophagosomes to help to digest the cellular debris, and then the luteolin, which helps to create those enzymes to help to break down that waste. And these two mechanisms ultimately can lead to supporting the process of autophagy. And there you have it. That is what's new. B12 in the form of adenosylcobalamin. We have dopamine for mood and motivation, and most importantly, brain health, cognitive performance, and enhancing autophagy.